I'd like to take a minute to talk about safe following distance and what constitutes a safe following distance and some observations that I've made over the years. So what I've noticed is most drivers don't seem to really even have a clue as to what safe following distance is, much less even practice it. And so I got to wondering about this. This is kind of a question, and you know, I did some thinking about it, and I remember when I was going through driver's ed, what we were taught as far as safe following distances, and what we were taught at that time was that it's 2 car lengths per every 10 miles per hour, and that would be a safe following distance. So, I'm a motorcycle safety instructor, and the Motorcycle Safety Foundation, what they teach is to maintain a 2-second following distance. What I see in practice is that people seem to maintain some, sometimes I've heard people saying all kinds of things. I've heard recent driver's ed students say, oh yeah, 2 car lengths per every 10 miles per hour. And then I've asked them, well, how good are you at estimating car lengths? I mean, that seems like a lot of math to do. You've got to, first of all, right now I'm going about 60 miles per hour. So 60 miles an hour times 2 is 12. A car is going to vary. The average car length is somewhere between 16 and 20 feet. So on the high side, a minimum safe following distance would be 240 feet. How does that compare with what the Motorcycle Safety Foundation gives as a safe following distance? Well, MSF teaches the 2 seconds. When you're going 60 miles per hour, you're going approximately 88 feet per second. So 60 miles per hour is, at 60 miles an hour, a 2-second following distance is about 196 feet. I have a real problem with the people who are teaching estimating car lengths, because most people really cannot estimate car lengths for any accuracy whatsoever. Whereas measuring distance by time is very simple. All you do is pick a fixed point on the side of the road, and when the car in front of you passes it, you begin counting, and when you get to it, you stop counting. So there's a street sign coming up here on my right. I'm going to count 1001, 1002, 1003, 1000. So that's about 3.5 seconds following distance between me and the car in front of me. I recently took ambulance driver training, and they actually taught us the minimum safe following distance was 4 seconds. But of course, when you're driving an ambulance, it's a large vehicle, very top heavy, may not necessarily stop as quickly as a passenger vehicle. Plus, if you've got a patient and you've got medics working on a patient, you want to try to avoid having to stop too quickly, because they may be treating the patient. They might be doing intravenous work, or they might be doing something else that can really get disturbed by making a quick stop. So the question comes up: why 2 seconds? What is the magic to 2 seconds? How do we come up with that as a calculation? And there's actually a really good answer for that. So the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, they're in charge of measuring things as far as roadways go. How much surface traction you've got on various different surfaces, how temperature affects traction, how drivers react to different situations. And what the NHTSA says is that it takes the average driver approximately 1.5 seconds to respond to a situation that occurs in front of them. And so that number becomes very important when we talk about the 2-second following distance. So, for example, if the truck in front of us, oh, actually, that van just crossed over into our lane, so this is a good example. If the van that's in front of us now began stopping, what happens in 2 seconds? So I want you to think about this for a second. If that van that's in front of us right now began stopping as hard as they possibly could, and I made no changes to what I'm doing, I just sit here, I've got the cruise control on, I'm at 60 miles an hour, what happens? In 2 seconds, I'm going to reach the point where the van began braking. Okay? And if I waited that entire 2 seconds and then applied brakes as hard as I possibly could, I'm going to wind up stopping exactly where the van is. In other words, I'm going to wind up just smashing into the van. Now, with the average driver having a 1.5 second time to react to an emergency braking situation, what that means is if your performance is the same as the average driver and you're following it in 2 seconds, if the driver in front of you begins stopping as hard as they possibly can, and as soon as you react, you begin stopping, you're going to come to a complete stop something like 44 feet behind the vehicle in front of you, because you're going to have about a half second of traveling, and then half second counts at the beginning of your at the speed you began braking. So it's just that, which in reality would be just enough space for you. Once you come to a stop, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start looking in your rearview mirror. You're going to start looking for maybe a clear space to get out of the way, because once you stop, vehicles behind you, are maybe continuing to approach, and you want to get out of their way and you want to avoid being run into. So that 2 seconds, keep in mind, that's also a minimum safe following distance. So if the vehicle behind you is traveling shorter than 2 seconds, in other words, if they're tailgating you and the vehicle in front of you stops quick, you're going to need to add whatever space they would have had, because at this point they're going to need to stop quickly. So you're going to need to add that into your consideration. So this is one question. This is actually in the training materials for MSF. What do you do if there's a vehicle tailgating? And I love this conversation, because I will usually say, well, if there's somebody behind me and they want to go faster, I want to help them get in front of me. I want to help them get around me. I'm not in competition with anybody. I'm not enforcing the speed limit. I want that person to go. I want them just to get away. So I will do what I can to help them. But for example, if I'm on a 1-lane roadway, especially if there's no shoulder, and the person behind me is very close, people's natural reaction is, well, I'll speed up and give them some room. And the problem is, now you're going the speed that they're bullying you into, and now they're still tailgating, so now your speeds are higher, and if you do have to stop, there's gonna be more damage involved. So another thing that I like to talk about is the minimum safe following distance. I'd actually prefer keeping the vehicle in front of me about 2 seconds away, and not really too much further than that. And here's why. If you're traveling on a section of roadway at 60 miles an hour, 88 feet per second, and the vehicle in front of you is 2 seconds in front of you, and something happens with that vehicle, they slow down quickly, or they begin swerving, or something happens to that vehicle, if you're 2 seconds behind them, that gives you adequate time to adjust and to adapt and to understand what's happening. But I've heard people say, well, more following distance is better. And that's not necessarily true. If I'm following behind that vehicle a half a mile behind that vehicle, and that vehicle comes to a complete stop, now we've got a situation where there's a car stopped on the road, and I'm approaching at 88 feet per second. So if I don't necessarily notice them come to a stop, I might have a situation where, there's a vehicle stopped, complete stop, dead stopped on the road. Let's say they had complete electrical failure and they were unable to pull off the road. They stop, and I don't necessarily realize they've stopped. Now I approach them at full speed. I may have a situation where I don't realize in time that they've stopped, even though they're way ahead of me. By the time I realize there's something wrong and I need to react to it, it might be too late. So it's not, certainly, there's no absolutes here, but it's certainly a situation where, in a perfect world, I'd like to maintain a comfortable following distance, leaving enough space where if the vehicle behind me is tailgating, I can, if the vehicle in front of me stops quickly, I can ensure that I stop without hitting the vehicle in front of me, and also the vehicle behind me can stop without hitting me.